everybody is very, very well. And I do hope that everybody's had a very, very good day. And I hope everybody's very, very well. And let's get myself all organised. And hello, Billy Kershaw. Hello, my running mate. Hello. Hello. They're eating the cat. They're eating the dogs. And hello there. Hello, Simon says, hope you're well and hope you've had a really, really good day. And I hope everybody is very, very well. So I'm basically going to wait. And hello, Jim, Stephen. Hope you're well. Hope you're very, very well, and hope you're having a wonderful day. And hello, Simon says yes. I don't know if any of you watched the video I made this morning, but it was about the Great British Energy Bill, and it was let's just say, for the first hour, it was a very, very interesting select committee meeting where, if you saw the video, you'll have seen, hello, my lovely daughter, God's last sis, I hope you're well. Don't worry, this will only be about an hour. And yeah, and hello, Leeds 91 Leeds, should I say. I hope you're very, very well. Hello, Mad Monk. Hope you're well. Hope you're very, very well. I will get in contact with you when I get a chance. But as I say, good evening, Stephen Bank here, and hope you're well, and hope you have had a lovely day now. And hello, Ben Shaw as well. Hope you're very, very well. Hope you're very, very well. Well, I don't know, as I say, I don't know if you watched the video that I made this morning. This was about the Great British Energy Bill. And let's just say it was quite interesting for a number of reasons. What you'll find here is two things that the chair, as you see here, Dr. Rupert Hook, I can tell straight away this will be her very, very first time being the chair of a select committee meeting. And she kind of reminded me of a bit of a Jobsworth. But to a certain degree, I kind of understand why. Because of a simple reason. They had 4 witnesses. They had 4 meetings, you could say. And they had about half an hour for each of the guests. So now I've watched them all. The first 2, very, very interesting. The last 2, not so much. So we won't really bother with it because I don't think they really said anything interesting of note to what was said in the first 2. But the real person who stole the show is, good evening, Aki's man, my good friend. Hope you're very, 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 very well. And I hope you've had a lovely day. But the real star of the show is Stephen Flynn. And he's questioning for the first 2 witnesses was very, very illuminating. Now, and just to let you know, Aki's mad. God's last sis is my beautiful daughter. She pops in and says hello. So I've got my beautiful daughter who's watching these as well. But as I say, this is about an hour, just about an hour. We'll just watch the first 2 because I think after the events that happened after Stephen Flynn, it all dies down and don't really say a right lot. But this is about the Great British Energy Bill, and I just found it very, very interesting. As I say, you'll find that a lot of the MPs in there, they ask questions about interesting questions, but not to write home about. But the real star of the show is Stephen Flynn, because he asks the important question. And let's have a little less of my blabbering and let's watch the first bit of it. And let's enjoy.
Watch your words. Before we begin, I have a few preliminary announcements. Hansard colleagues would be grateful if members could email their speaking notes to hansardnotes@parliament.uk. And can you please switch your electronic devices to silent Teas and coffees are not allowed during sittings. So today we will consider the programme motion on the amendment paper. We'll then consider a motion to enable the reporting of written evidence for publication and a motion to allow us to deliberate in private about divvying up the questions before we get into the oral evidence sessions. So in view of the time available, I hope we can take these matters formally without debate. I first call the Minister to move the programme motion, standing in his name, which was discussed yesterday by the programming subcommittee of this bill. Minister Michael Shanks.
Moved.
The question is that the programme motion, as on the amendment paper, as many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it.
I must admit, this is something I've not really seen before, so it's quite interesting.
About written evidence.
Formally moved.
The question is the motion on the amendment paper. Nobody wants to speak? Good. As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
Of the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it. I think the ayes have it. Copies of written evidence which the committee receives will be made available in the committee room, which is actually that desk over there. I now call the Minister to move the motion about deliberating in private.
Formally moved.
As many as are of that opinion say aye.
Aye.
To the contrary, no. I think the ayes have it, the ayes have it. We now go into...
Yeah, that's what they do. Which is quite handy. It gives opportunity for other people to come in. But don't worry about Billy Kershaw, my running mate. I hope whatever you're cooking is absolutely gorgeous and delicious. So don't blame you. And good evening, BUFU, Mike. Hope you're well. No wonder nothing gets sorted if they're not allowed brews in committee meetings. Evening all, yes, I totally agree. But just as long as it's Yorkshire tea. Nothing else. Got to be Yorkshire tea. And 91 laser I could do with some cheap GB energy, but it will probably cost even more than it does now by the time it's done. Unsurprised. But good evening, one Gerard. Hope you're well. Good evening. Loved our interaction last podcast. Keep it up. What you're doing is admirable. Keep us plebs up to it. Well, I do my best. I do actually do my best. Thank you for that. I do enjoy the Friday Frolic. It's probably one of my favourites of the week. Because it's just that light-hearted relief from what we have to deal with on a daily basis, and it sets me up for the weekend. So thank you for that. I'll give you that, Stephen Banker. Yeah, Scottish blend tea for me. Yeah, I'll give you that. yes. Oh yes. But yeah, they said they did this for a while, and it did this for about a minute or two, and then they just crack on then. But it sort of like gives a few more people the opportunity to get in while they're still here, and we can have a little chat amongst ourselves for a couple of minutes. Because as I say, I don't know if any of you watched the video. Hello, Phil McCracken. Hope you're well and hope you've had a lovely day. The PFI 2.0 bill isn't worth the paper it's written on. GB Energy is a hedge fund for private profit, owns nothing, produces nothing, manufactures nothing. And if I'm honest, from what I watched of this select committee meeting, I have a funny feeling now. I think I can see where you're coming from, really, because I'll say if you saw the Stephen Flynn video, it basically shows that, let's be honest, what they've got written in it is very, very detail light, isn't it? So I think you could very much be onto something there. But I think we can see if we can push it forward a little bit. So, because I think Because I think it's... I can keep blabbering on. Right.
With the bill. Yeah.
Right. Here we go.
My husband is a company secretary of a community energy project in Sheffield called Sheffield Renewables that generates energy.
Duly noted. Thanks, Olivia. And also, Andrew.
Hello, I don't know if it's relevant, but I've always been told to say it out loud and you'll tell me. Just say I'm a member of the GMB and the GMB are later, and I was formerly, before election, Deputy General Secretary of Prospect, who are speaking this morning as well.
Thank you. And talking of
I also am a member of the GMB. And also...
And Minister. Okay.
I'm a member of the GMB.
Brilliant. Okay, GMB wins. Two more?
A member, yeah, of the GMB, yeah.
Right. Okay. For full transparency, thank you all.
I'm not.
Good evening, my friend Sir Larry. I hope to God the Sir Keir is still respecting the hallowed halls of number 10, and you still get on good terms with the other cat, their family cat. I do hope so.
Right. I'm a member of Unison. Okay, we will begin by hearing oral evidence from Mr. Juergen Maier, Chair of Great British Energy and Chair of Digital Catapult. Before I call the first member to ask a question, I should like to remind all members that all questions should be limited to matters within scope of the bill. It is actually quite a short bill and quite narrow, so if you're straying off, I will tell you off. Or don't stray off in the first place. And we must stick to the timing. So this first evidence session we have until 9:50 a.m. So would the witnesses introduce themselves for the record? We only have one in this session.
Yes, good morning, everybody. Pleasure to be here. And as you've just said, I'm the startup chair of Great British Energy. And in terms of Digital Catapult, like you just mentioned, I'm in the process of stepping down from that. We're just looking for the new chair to replace myself so I can focus on this role.
Okay, our questions will start with the Shadow Minister.
Thank you very much, Chair. Good morning, Mr. Maier. Thank you very much for joining us this morning. Great British Energy, congratulations on your appointment as Chair. It was announced with great...
Yeah, I know. You'll have to listen to this complete bell tap for 5-10 minutes. Sorry.
Fanfare at Labour Party conference that the new headquarters of Great British Energy would be in Aberdeen. What does that actually mean? What will the HQ actually do, and how many people will be employed at the HQ?
Well, the HQ is where we will centre all of our operations. And that means the HQ will be there, so all of the key staff, the chief executive, when we get round to appointing one, brackets, we will probably start with an interim chief executive that might not be located there, but eventually that will be our plan. Now, there will be other locations. We also would like a location in Edinburgh and in Glasgow, particularly to help on innovation, maybe financial services. But where I see the main role in Aberdeen is particularly around operational engineering jobs. And ultimately, those are the jobs which are an abundance of in Aberdeen, are the well-paid jobs and are also the greater quantity of the jobs.
Okay, thank you very much. The overarching aim of GB Energy is to speed up the transition, to invest in new and emerging technologies. What would you judge as a success when your time as chair has ended? If you could look back on your time as chair, what would you judge as have been a success?
There's two very simple answers of that, and that is, one is, how many renewable energy, clean energy projects have Great British Energy been a part of, either as a co-investor, as an investor, or as an enabler, and thereby how much more renewable energy have we managed to get on the grid, number one, and number two is how many jobs and how much prosperity have we created as a result of that, and made sure that as much of the supply chain is Scottish/British rather than overseas.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Catherine Fuchs.
And welcome, Mr. Maier. Great to meet you. Thank you for coming before the committee. So, in Monmouthshire...
Hold on, I just had to make Sir Larry, good to be back to on a True Professionals live stream. Oh, I don't know. I think you're being too kind with me. I usually muck these up, but anyway. So when did I stop voting Labour or Tory? If I'm honest, here you either have two choices. It's either I'm in a Labour stronghold, so it doesn't matter who I vote for. I can vote for anybody, and it won't make any difference. It'll always be Labour stronghold. But I've voted. Sometimes I voted Green, and I voted Labour as well. I voted Labour in 2019 as well, and so. But as I say, this time it didn't really matter because whoever I voted for, we all knew we were going to win anyway. But you got the first Scottish part right, absolutely. But yeah, I'll totally agree with Mad Monk about Andrew Bower. Yeah, total bell end. Yeah.
We've seen the benefit of really a lot of community energy projects, such as solar power on the Bridges Community Centre in Monmouth. We've also seen in Wales lots of hydro projects, community energy like Iniogwen in Bangor, which is a hydro project. So can you share how you think the bill's provisions will support community energy projects in the whole of Britain and Wales?
So community energy is definitely a priority of Great British Energy, and I mean if you want to point specifically to the bill, then if you go to item 3, objects number 2A, it says the production, distribution, storage and supply of clean energy, and I very much see community energy as a core part of that. So as Great British Energy, we definitely want to support the schemes that you've just been talking about, whether that's in Wales, Scotland, England or Northern Ireland. So we will definitely be doing that.
Thank you.
Stephen Flynn.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mr Maier, for joining us this morning. If I could perhaps go back to your answer to a previous question, I don't think you quite clarified how many jobs will actually be within Aberdeen. And if I picked you up correctly, you said you expect those jobs to be operational engineering jobs. Yeah. Could you perhaps elaborate upon that and maybe steer into giving a little bit of clarity as to what you actually expect GB Energy to do in practice? Because the bill, of course, says that the Secretary of State is going to subsequently provide clarity upon that, but there's obviously a lot of discourse in the public domain about what it is it's actually going to do.
Yeah, indeed. So the answer to your first question, you're right, I didn't answer it directly, and the reason is we haven't obviously been able to put a direct number on it yet. It will be in the hundreds. It may eventually be 1,000 or more in the HQ. And of course you will now say, well, that's not going to help manage the energy transition. And the reason for that is that the large numbers of people that we will be helping employ will be in the supply chain. If we just look at some of the numbers already, by the end of the decade there will be 100,000 people employed in offshore wind. I'm hoping that many more of those will be floating offshore wind, and floating offshore wind will be something that will happen very much off the coast of Aberdeen and indeed the whole east coast of the United Kingdom. And so with regards to the jobs will be the sorts of jobs that will work with supply chains and private sectors to determine how are we going to enable floating offshore wind. What is the technology? What are some of the innovation challenges? Project managing those, helping those schemes get through planning permission, making sure those can get onto the grid. So it will be all those sorts of questions. So I very much see the role of Great British Energy as an enabler of getting such new technologies onto the grid, and also as an investor and a co-investor, and obviously that's going to take quite a team of people and skills to achieve that.
Okay, just one more.
Quickie.
So in that context, when do you expect GB Energy to bring down energy bills?
To
bring down energy bills as promised?
Well, look, the only way to get energy bills down, and indeed to get greater energy security, is to get more renewable energy onto the grid. You know, we do have to keep reminding people that the reason why energy bills went up wasn't because of renewable energy, it was because of a global oil and gas price crisis. So therefore, every megawatt, every gigawatt of renewable energy that we will put on the grid will help bring bills and prices down. Now, the exact mechanism by that happens is, of course, a matter of policy, how you decide to bring those bills to the consumer, and that is not the scope of Great British Energy and is not scope of the bill either.
It's Rang from Scope. Yeah, talk of Crichton.
Very interesting. If you watch the earlier video, you notice that it's not the first time he asked that, but anyway, good evening, Joe Left. I hope you're well, and Leaps in. Hope you're very, very well. Yeah, well, seeing the jobs go straight to the wealthiest in Scotland, why not somewhere like Ayrshire, where we're not so well off? Very, very interesting. It's like, we noticed he didn't really answer it, did he, really? But, you know, he does seem to basically, he does ask that again, as you'll hear at the end, where it gets very, very interesting. But let's continue.
Thank you, Chair Gordon. Good morning, Mr. Maier. Just following on from Catherine's questions, can you highlight how GB Energy will involve communities in this renewable transition, and what kind of benefits the Secretary spoke about mandatory community benefit for communities?
Yeah, well, thank you for the question. Yeah, so we have laid out these sort of 5 key priorities of Great British Energy. One is to invest, co-invest. The other one is to enable, to help accelerate development, and the third one is very much about local energy, community energy, that your colleague was just talking about earlier, and it's through the community energy schemes, and the reason why we're so keen on that is that this is where the community engagement really comes in. That won't be the gigawatts of renewable energy. The gigawatts will be in floating offshore wind. But I passionately believe that engaging with local communities, whether that's with local solar, or it could be onshore wind, or it could be tidal type schemes, that you can really get that sort of community engagement, community acceptance, and indeed you really deliver that sort of local social benefit of what those schemes can deliver.
And economic benefit too, we hope.
Sorry?
And economic benefit too.
And of course.
Right.
Sarah Holthouse.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Maier.
Hello. Good evening, my good friend. Is it Jean Marios? Sorry if I butchered it. I'm terrible with when it comes to all these. I'm sure you said call you John. So is it João Marios? Good evening. Hope you're well, and welcome to the live stream. Yeah, this is about Great British Energy, which interesting select committee meeting that was on the 8th. Well, it was last week.
It's very good to see you here. I've got a sort of number of questions about the overall aims of what the bill and what the company is trying to achieve. So you've just said it will be an enabler, so we have to imagine it as something that will happen before any CFDs are being attributed. So it's an enabler to make people and companies ready, for example, to bid into the CFDs. Is that very much how you see the role? Because otherwise people are sort of obviously used to a status quo, and the CFDs have been very successful, and I think some companies are sort of wondering how is it all going to sort of fit in together.
I think certainly the enabling part of what we will be doing will be pre-CFDs, as you say, and that's also where our partnership with the Crown Estate comes in, that this is where we will be doing a lot of the early consenting, the early engaging, the willingness to co-invest and give confidence, but we will also be there past CFDs, so as and when the schemes, get developed, there may be opportunities at that point to come in and be a co-investor in a scheme, so we would be supporting that also.
So can I then...
Because apparently 47 past is our last question. There's 4 more people indicating. So
yeah. Does the bill then sort of give us enough clarity how, for example, other financial institutions like the infrastructure bank or the business bank will actually then support what GB Energy is trying to do, because we obviously, the bill is very short, and I wonder whether there's enough scope within the bill to explain that to investors, for example.
Well, I think there will be two things, won't there? There is this bill, which I think, very clearly sets out the structure of how we will set up Great British Energy and the key areas of focus. Obviously, there will then be a business plan, and there will be a framework agreement that will be agreed between ourselves and the Secretary of State, and it will be in that we have to clarify exactly those questions, and indeed in that also where Great British Energy takes its role, where UKIB or the UK Investment Bank takes its role, etc. So those are things that will need to be clarified. But I don't think putting those in the bill will particularly help us do that.
One last question about the timeframes, because this is very vague. The Secretary may prepare a statement. Any ideas when we can expect that in front of Parliament?
When we can expect what, sorry?
The statement that will be laid before Parliament about the strategic priorities for Great British Energy.
I'm not sure of the exact timings on that, so I'll have to. You'll maybe when you get evidence from the Minister, he'll be able to put a time on that later.
Okay.
Karen Moon.
Thank you, Chair.
Good evening, my good friend Captain Bart Roberts. Hope you're well. Wonder I'd take over for Trump's golf course in Aberdeen, make it open to the public like the old municipal courses, then it will make a profit. I'd kick Trump in the behind, give him 0 points. Totally agree. Is that the same golf course where there was? I don't know if they still live there. There were a mother who had her water cut off to a point where, for how many, God knows how many years, cut them off because they refused to sell their land. They refused to sell it, so he just cut off their water. So she hadn't had either a bath or a shower for 3 years. She's having to wash herself in the back garden or whatever, and this went on for years and years and years. So I even remember watching a guy who made a video about it where the absolute disrespect that Donald Trump Jr. He basically is saying, "Look at this place that they live in. What a shithole," and stuff like that, and just basically disrespect him. Yeah, I thought that's what it was, Stephen Banker. Yeah, and it just shows you that yeah. So I totally agree, Juan Gerard. Yeah, boot him out because he's an absolute disgrace. And if you, I can't remember the name of the video, but if you ever get a chance, it's very, very interesting watch. Very, very interesting. But anyway, I think he's nearly finished as this guy.
Talked about how local communities will benefit from community energy, and you've talked about, you mentioned floating offshore wind off the east coast of the United Kingdom, and of course down in Cornwall we are, between us and Wales, very close to the Celtic Sea opportunity, and I'm wondering if you can elaborate on particularly the social benefits that may come from the Celtic Sea development in an area like Cornwall, which is one of the most deprived in the UK.
Yeah, indeed. Well, I mean, the question earlier was very much pointed at the northeast and Aberdeen, hence my response. But you are right. As a matter of fact, the two key areas where floating offshore wind will be developed is exactly in that northeast and is in the Celtic Sea. I mean, from a logistics point of view, you couldn't put them further apart, so it's not exactly ideal.
What's the scope of the bill? I think, yeah.
Yeah, but anyway, the answer to your question is it's the same answer as I gave for Aberdeen. So there will be a HQ, a lot of the activities, project management, knowledge engineering. But obviously, when it gets to installation, when it gets to port-type infrastructure work, there will be significant opportunity for that in Cornwall and anywhere serving the Celtic Sea.
Thank you.
Harriet Cross.
Thank you, and good morning, Mr. Maier. In the bill, it states that GB&G is going to be involved in supply storage of clean energy, and then goes on to say that clean energy is from sources other than fossil fuels. Where's sort of the cut-off in that? So, for example, if you think of things like blue hydrogen, where it's sort of you've got the crossover between fossil fuels being involved, but actually the product is not necessarily what you call a fossil fuel. So, where in those sort of things does GB&G come in?
I mean, our core focus is going to be on renewable energy not derived from fossil fuels, to be clear. However, there are obviously energy sources that are part of the transition, and the bill does allow, so in 3.2b, it says the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions from energy produced from fossil fuels, so that is included in the bill, and that would, for example, include blue hydrogen. And I believe that blue hydrogen is necessary as part of the transition because you just can't produce enough green hydrogen to get us going from the get-go, so therefore you need a transitional way of going there, as long as the clear purpose is to see that as a transition to make sure the future is all green hydrogen.
So in that respect, therefore, we would still need fossil fuels, oil and gas going forward in order to help the transition
Of course.
Fine, okay.
Yes.
Okay, this is probably going to be the last question because it's already 47. Uma Kumran.
Welcome, Mr. Maier, and it's good to hear your reassurances on communities being kept at the heart of this, and you told us about renewables, about offshore, about clean energy. We've heard it's a short bill, but I'd welcome sort of your thoughts on what the bill tells us about the objects and the strategic priorities of GB Energy, and if, in your view, it gives you enough level of detail to carry out your work.
Well, it certainly gives me very clear direction, along with the framework document that we will develop together with the Secretary of State and the Minister. So yes, I mean, in short answer to your question, I think it's pretty clear. The purpose is clear, and I think that's the most important thing. And the purpose at the end of the day is that we're going to accelerate the amount of clean, renewable energy we put onto the grid, and we're going to create as much prosperity, as many jobs through it as possible.
Thank you.
I just want to say the individual behind him. Now, this is somebody who's going to be in the second meeting, and quite clearly, I get the feeling, possibly from the LGBTQ community. And the reason why I'm saying this is, I'm just thinking, it's. I just want to be respectful. Because I didn't think I really wanted to say this because when I made the video, about the meeting that this individual was in, and some of the comments I thought were a bit unnecessary. I think one of them that struck a chord with me was at so-and-so time, I'm sure I saw him scratching his balls, and I'm thinking, is that the best you can do for political discord? I think, no, it's not something to do, because like, we all know our good friend Rachel from Politics Social, and I think people like Rachel gets a load of shit unnecessary. So I know you guys will be, but I just thought I want to say, just please be respectful.
Pippa Halings.
Yes, thank you very much, and welcome, Mr. Maier. The main thing would be about the accountability, so public accountability of GB Energy. So if you feel very clear this gives you strategic direction, how do you feel that the bill provides also for public accountability of the money that's being invested or co-invested?
Well, we're seeing pretty good evidence of that right now, aren't we? But but at the end of the day, this is now, I think, a pretty well-established model for being absolutely state-owned, independently run. Independently run means excellent governance, and I'm obviously going to ensure as Startup Chair that will be the case, and that will be done, and that doesn't all need to be in the bill because we know what that means. You've got Companies Act, we've got numerous acts of how good governance works, and we will make sure through our board, our non-executives, that proper governance is given. And of course, there will be many opportunities for reviews by the Secretary of State, and ultimately for the usual sort of public scrutiny.
Order, order. That's the end of our first panel. Can we have the witnesses in place for the second panel, please? Thank you.
Very interesting, eh? But yeah, so, yeah, it's no problems, Stephen Bankett. See, the thing is, somebody else was saying, "Oh, nice dress he's wearing." And you just think, and I just think, for me, I don't see anything. I don't see anything to take the rise out because we're all different, aren't we? But you know, it was just something I just felt I had to say just in
Here,
case.
oral evidence from Mika Minio-Puelelo, Senior Policy Officer on Industry and Climate at the TUC, and also Mike Clancy, General Secretary of the Prospect Union. So for this session, we've got until 10:20 a.m. Could the witnesses please introduce yourselves and pronounce your name correctly? Which
So that's about half hour.
To do.
Nobody ever gets it right. So it's Mika Minio-Puelelo, and I co-lead on industry as well as on climate, as well as on energy for the Trade Union Congress. Thanks for having me.
I'm Mike Clancy, General Secretary of the Prospect Trade Union, represent across the range of public and private sectors, but we have 22,000 plus members in the energy sector.
Okay, I first call the first member asking a question, Shadow Minister.
I think it's fair to say there was some scepticism expressed at the recent TUC Congress of the current government's plans for the energy sector, not least fears about the tens of thousands of jobs currently under threat within the oil and gas sector. How do you see GB Energy fitting into the overall piece when it comes to seeking to protect those jobs through the transition?
It's very, very true that trade unions want to see good quality jobs going forward, and that there are concerns about how do we deliver a just transition, because obviously there's a reality, transitions aren't easy. To make that happen, we need some levers, we need government, we need some tools that can help ensure that workers can either have the existing quality jobs the existing ones future-proofed, or transfers to new places. And GB Energy is a tool that can help make that possible, that we currently don't really have in the UK. France, Norway, Denmark, Germany, there's a lot more institutions. The public sector effectively has a bigger stake, and we don't have that. Now, GB Energy being there, as Juergen said before, can be part and parcel of enabling the supply chain growth that we haven't seen in recent years, because CFDs haven't delivered that as they are. It can also deliver the coordinated collective pathways for workforce as well as upskilling. That doesn't really happen with the piecemeal way it's working at the moment. And it can also play a role by ensuring that renewable jobs themselves will be good jobs, both through procurement and through effectively ensuring a race to the top. And that's all part of a plan. And what came out of our Congress recently is we need to see a plan. And to have that plan, we need institutions like GB Energy.
Have you got enough clarity thus far, do you think, through this bill, through GB Energy's creation, to give confidence to those people who are worried about their jobs in the sectors that are?
Something about talks actually in this bill, Shadow Minister, so I'm being steered by the clerk.
No, that's absolutely fine.
To get you off this subject. Anyone else?
Thank God.
Okay, let's go to Olivia Blake in that case.
It follows on slightly, but I just wanted to ask if you think that this bill will help ensure a just transition for UK workers. You kind of hinted at that, but I wonder if Mike Clancy has.
Do you want to go first?
Well, following what Mika said, and as we are focusing actually upon the content of the bill, we welcome the creation of GB Energy, but the concern we've had is that for some time energy policy has been long on rhetoric but short on delivery. And what we mean by that is that in the context of just transition, the losses of jobs are not.
The whips are saying that these mics, nobody can hear me either. I think you need to speak into it because nobody can hear what anyone's saying.
Unusual for a trade union official to be asked to increase their volume. But nonetheless, I'll run counter to type and try to do that. We felt that we welcomed the creation, we welcomed the bill, but the reality is that communities are facing job losses now, and the promises of jobs tomorrow, I think, is where the challenge lies. And as we are talking about the bill, we certainly want to see GB Energy created as an exemplar in terms of social partnership, job creation, and turning the promise of green jobs of quality into a reality. And that's the pathway, I think, that the bill has to provide for communities directly affected by technological and other changes. I guess in questions we'll bring out further things about organisational design, because we've certainly got some views on whether the bill leads to an organisational design that's going to enable this.
And I think, because you asked, will it ensure? So I don't think the bill in itself, we very much welcome the bill. Will the bill in itself ensure a just transition? No. Does it provide a mechanism and a tool that then the Secretary of State and government can use to help deliver that? Yes. And ideally, we also think the bill is good because it creates the basis for GB Energy to grow. And ultimately, if we're going to see that successful transition and all the jobs and the prosperity that we need to see in the UK, GB Energy needs to be on par to the equivalent companies that we see in other countries, whether it's Ørsted or Statoil or Equinor or Vattenfall or EDF. And that's a long-term process, and over time that can be good for workers and it can make the whole country richer.
Stephen Flynn.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you both for coming. Just in relation to that specific point, and it's also in the written evidence that you've provided, you made reference to Ørsted, EDF, to Vattenfall and to Statkraft. GB Energy is going to be capitalised with £1.6 billion per annum. How does that equate to the delivery of projects similar to Ørsted, EDF, Vattenfall and Statkraft? Is that not quite a leap?
I mean, you wouldn't build Ørsted in 1 year, 2 years or 5 years. ESB, the Irish state oil company, moved into offshore wind gradually, step by step, and it took them about 4 or 5 years to get in there well. So we think we should aim to get that by 2040, by 2045. There, you start somewhere, you start with a capitalisation. Now, we can all talk about whether the government could access more borrowing, fiscal heritage, etc. But you can start with that. It won't be on that scale by 2030. But it can put in place the mechanisms and a plan so that by 2040 and by 2045, we are a more powerful country. We are a richer country because we're finally on par with our peers.
So we've made some commentary about the treatment of public debt and this.
I have to say, look at that face. That was the face of a man who to me, didn't look too impressive. He didn't look too impressed, did he? I would ask, as a taxpayer, how much money will this cost? How much in loans will the state have to take in? How long, and what about the people working in the business? Yes. You're probably right, Stephen Bankier. Yes, I probably do need monitors, but, I just have to make do with what I've got. But don't worry about it, Mike. Yeah, I totally agree, Sir Larry. Didn't look too impressed, did he?
This space for GB Energy and whether the debt rules, which are subject to current debate, should be adjusted so that public investment companies are appropriately excluded because they will provide a return to the Exchequer. We're also interested in the structure of GB rising from the bill in this regard. Clearly, it's going to be a public investment vehicle, but if it's going to be an operator like Ørsted or so on, and I obviously heard Juergen talk about the nature of the assets that it may bring under its control. These are significant engineering assets, significant engineering propositions, and if you're going to build a company in that respect, you better start now. And you better think about the labour markets in which you're going to obtain the skills, which are very competitive. And I could keep you all morning talking about the way that won't happen if they are constrained by public sector pay constraints. Now, the serious point there is that there's more than one pathway for this entity. And if it's going to have a dual pathway, it needs to be thought through pretty early, because realising the floating offshore wind proposition, whatever sea it may be in, is a very significant endeavour, requiring an operational management, an engineering, construction, planning, and indeed operating capacity that, we're at the bill stage, needs to be thought of right now.
Thanks.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you both for coming in. This bill on GB Energy is a hugely exciting return to public steering of our energy system.
Someone tells me he's Labour.
One of the big challenges we have before we even start building new systems is the skills shortage we face and the real challenge we've had in nuclear, renewables, other forms of energy production. Can I ask you both, how do you feel the bill can stimulate and relate to the needs to develop skills as well as deliver new jobs? Because that ensuring skills development in different regions of the country as well as in traditional areas.
So if I may start on that, Chair, that's okay. Andrew, you're absolutely right, and there are various things which need to be brought together that the bill itself probably needs to consider in terms of the skills profile generally. Other forms of generation which are within this space, there's obviously going to be an Office of Nuclear Jobs developed by the Secretary of State and so on. Our view is that this comes down to the extent to which the bill can specify that this should be an exemplar company, that it sets objectives for its board in relation to not only its community engagement but how it conducts its processes to ensure that the short-termism that sometimes emerges from the private sector form of energy ownership is not characterised by a public company, which should be an absolute champion in these areas. So it does come down to governance, it comes down to the objectives and how they are set for a public company, and then knitting that into the other parts of the skills landscape. And that's why I also make the point, not in a usual trade union way, may I say, but you have to think about the labour markets in which GB is going to play, because they are very tight, very demanding, and there's a whole range of infrastructure that this country needs to invest in to deliver the growth mission.
And I think there's good practice to learn from those other countries, from Ørsted and from Statoil, now Equinor, and from Statkraft, where they took that proactive role and identified where did they think the country needed to be in 10 years' time, not just where from a minimalist reactive position might they need to be, but where did the country need to be, and then how do they invest for the long run in those skills.
Okay, this is a bit strange. The clock's saying we're kind of okay for time because it's 20 past, but it's a little bit getting a bit hypothetical from what will happen on.
Well, just want to say, good evening, Evelyn Humes. They were talking about building what we already have in Scotland. We produce 113% of our own energy in Scotland, and they turn them off to let the gas flow and keep prices high. Is that see the thing is stuff like this? It's not something I'm that big on and intelligent enough, but watching this, I do have a degree of skepticism. But hello, anyway, hello, Evelyn Hume. Hope you're well and hope you have had a nice day.
Top of the bill, which I'm being told not really allowed. Andrew, do you have anything else? Okay, in that case, Harriet Cross.
Thank you. And I suppose this is aimed at both or either. I'm quite relaxed. In terms of the job prospects for GBNG, and I know we've had figures such as 650,000 jobs and 69,000 of those in Scotland as and when they come. But of course, and I'm sure what your members will be looking at is not necessarily the future jobs, but it's current jobs now, and the implication of the bill and what that might have on them. What would you like to see in the bill in order to ensure that jobs that are there today are protected? And do you think the bill, how it is at the moment, can and will impact them?
Well, I'm not sure as much as the powers.
I'll say sorry, Button. Can I just say, please, people, be respectful. I want to have a good space for people like my friend Rachel Harris to watch stuff like this. And some of the comments, being a little bit disappointed. Sorry.
Parliament are extensive. I'm not sure a bill in itself can give any of those guarantees. And I'm not actually trying to avoid an answer. The reality is that the bill's going to set up a company with certain objectives, and those objectives should address directly the generation of employment. But you've heard already this morning, and you've asked in questions, how many jobs in Aberdeen? What will it then scale up to? What will it mean in terms of the supply chain? And what we're seeing is a lot of numbers in a lot of different energy spaces, which are very considerable, potentially great demand, very high quality jobs, both in the public space and in the private ownership of utilities. But it's all promise. And some of the numbers are so significant in aggregate, you have to wonder where these where it's going to come from, because the pressures on different parts of infrastructure. There are lots of synergies between this sector and others in aviation, defence, and so on. The skills are the same. The basic throughput of STEM skills in this country is a long-term inhibitor to our productivity and our delivery. So, in terms of the bill, the narrowness of this focus, I think it has to this organisation needs to be the stimulus for that supply chain with good employment conditions throughout. One of the issues in Just Transition is that you replace structured, high-quality jobs, public and private provided, with jobs which are more flimsy, more fragile.
It's all right, Livestream. Don't worry about it. Thanks for your apology, but don't worry about it. We'll move on. It's just that I just think we're better than this.
More temporary. So if GB Energy can be a champion for long-term durable relationships with its workforce, and that's how you want the energy sector to go, that's your best bet of having the jobs promise to replace those which have to be removed due to the climate impact.
So in terms of, obviously, the easiest solution is if you can keep someone working in their current workplace, precisely because, as Mike explains, there's a significant risk in shifting across, you end up with more precarious work. A lot of the onshore supply chain for offshore oil and gas has been struggling. We've seen a big decline over the past 14 years within both the supply chain and direct. And chunks of that supply chain can be future-proofed to also support offshore wind and other parts. GB Energy has a significant role to play in supporting those supply chain sites, whether it's Shopwood Offshore, whether it's smolders, whether it's cable manufacturers, to go, okay, we will be purchasing from you, and not just from China, because there's a big risk of China coming to dominate the offshore wind supply chain. We could end up in a situation with offshore wind as we are with solar at the moment, where if you buy a solar panel, it's 97% made in China. And GB Energy can play a role to make sure that's situated here. And that's partly the protection. I think the other part is about, what could be done to the bill to not necessarily protect jobs. Mike is right. The bill itself can't entirely protect individual jobs. But is there possible? So in our submission, we suggested there could possibly be an amendment to the strategic priorities section, suggesting that the statement of strategic priorities itself should have regard for just transition and for job quality, job creation. And that should be embedded within that statement as a core part, that when the Secretary of State sits down and goes, okay, part of what we're going to put in here is about just transition and quality job creation. So that is a possible amendment. And then another one in terms of protection was we also suggested, particularly given that a lot of the job creation and the economic impact will be in Wales and in Scotland, so it will play an important role for those nations. And that probably means that those nations should have a say through their devolved governments on what happens down the line to GB Energy. Let's say down the line, a future government goes, actually we're going to privatise it, or we're going to instruct it to dispose of a lot of assets. Should Scotland and Wales be able to have a say and go, this is actually about our economy here, and we think that shouldn't happen. And that could be done. So we suggest an amendment. You could explore different mechanisms, including golden shares, for those devolved governments that specifically say that.
The Shadow Minister, for talking about jobs when they're not in the bill, I think we are straying quite a fair distance away. We're meant to stick with
proper
the
jobs,
scope
within
of the contents of the bill. And with that in mind, a brilliant example will be Josh McAllister.
Thank you very much, Chair, and welcome to you both. Mike Clancy, it's a question for you really, which is that the bill allows flexibility for the relationship in the future between Great British Energy and Great British Nuclear, which I think is really welcome. Can you share a little bit about your members and maybe your own personal reflection on the bill in relation to the establishment of Great British Nuclear under the last government, and any lessons for the autonomy and the operation of GBE under this government enabled by this bill?
Well, I think we are always dealing with very long-term propositions when it comes to energy assets, and whether it's public or private, what you need is stable investment conditions so that the entity can build confidence, recruit the staff it needs to deliver its mission. I will keep coming back to this. It is an extremely challenging space if you create uncertainty for a public entity. particularly more so for a public entity, in terms of whether high caliber people wish to commit their energies and their talent in what is a globally competitive environment for their skills. So the most important thing I think we can do is to create that stable investment circumstance for government, accepting the different challenges there are fiscally and in terms of spending. We would obviously say that there can be no successful transition without a nuclear component, and we are obviously advocates of that, and therefore we are strong advocates of Great British Nuclear. It will need to have, shall we say, that ability to operate within its own circumstances, nuclear in particular. It has to be done to time and cost. That's the big issue. But what most important thing that the bill can do is ensure that you have that stable investment and you make the commitment. I mean, I've been around a little while and probably I've been involved in more nuclear and energy renaissances than anyone else probably put together in the room. And I think what we need is now to get to the actual renaissance and get building. And, you know, if you can give that stability, people will come to this because they are mission-driven, committed individuals who will want to be part of that renaissance.
Thank you.
Thank you. Good morning.
I have to say, don't worry about Leipzig. Yeah, I don't think anybody knew what he was talking about, really. Because I think it all lost on us. And Joe, I think you're right, actually. It was something that I took along with. It seems very vague, doesn't it? And like the already said, when it comes to Stephen Flynn, I think he already, I think he already shows that it's very, very vague as well. Little drama sorted. Oh, thank God for that, Stephen Mankey. Oh, glad to hear it. Nuclear. Yeah, well, I've heard people say you shouldn't be too worried about nuclear, and some people I'm not so keen. I suppose you won't be keen if they were building one down the bottom of your road, would you? So it's I suppose it depends on where it is, isn't it, my friend?
I do want to come back to clause 5 of the bill, which is about the statement of strategic priorities. And really, I think most of what I hear this morning is that we are a little bit worried about not enough detail about certain things. So should there, on the face of the bill, be more detail about the strategic priorities and, for example, talk about the job creation? Or should there be, for example, a precise timeline when we can actually expect that? Because the whole purpose of the bill is that to speed up all of that energy transition. And currently, we will see a statement. When is it important that we actually get some timelines in the bill?
I think yes. The simple answer to that is yes, because the longer that there is a concept phase and a positive concept, nonetheless. The more that, because we are talking about a multiplier effect from GBE in many respects. That if GBE is delivered, starts to operate, gives confidence to the direction of energy policy, then actually other investors will see that and will look at that. This is a serious proposition, and therefore we are engaging in this huge process of energy transition. And as I said just a moment ago, it also means that talented people can see a future. We want to be part of that. So within the process of parliamentary drafting, the more that a clear set of objectives which actually differentiate it as a public entity, but which sets the tone for what you want from energy assets in the future, the better. Because that will give that confidence. And it also has the knock-on to confidence to private investors in other parts of the energy environment.
Kumaran.
Thank you both. Really welcome hearing the views of trade unions in the session, and especially keeping workers at the heart. Do you think that GB Energy can help drive the demand for skills and apprenticeships and prepare our workforce for a just transition?
There is a lot of demand at the moment, and there's a significant lack of supply is part of the challenge, and part of the reason that there's a lack of supply is that there's a lack of investment, and that we as a country have not invested into our workforce sufficiently over time, which is why you get into a situation where different sectors effectively end up poaching people who are in most demand. And GB Energy provides a mechanism to be part of it won't solve it as a whole. And the government have got other plans as well to try and put that investment in, but it can have a significant role in going, oh yes, here we are going to provide that long-term investment directly, and also where we're cooperating, clearly GB Energy will be partnering with the private sector and through then procurement powers and going, okay, in our joint project on, let's say, this big offshore wind farm that's being built here, we're going to require a supply chain across the board to be investing into apprenticeships, whether it's tier 1, tier 2, tier 3, down again, so that we get that overall growth. So it can play a significant role there.
So I've already touched upon this. I mean, we have maybe it seems strange, but we probably have a bit of a mission at the present minute because of the constraints applied by the previous administration to remove our members from who are in technical occupations in the energy field from the public sphere, because the labour markets that they operate in reward better in the private sector. And the private sector is in a war for talent in this area because, you know, in this country we haven't, over the many decades, valued STEM skills and engineering. I speak as a humanities graduate who is always in awe of people who actually go to institutions and learn things that matter and are then applied for the health of the nation. So we have to start with valuing STEM, valuing it on a diverse basis, ensuring that the workforce reflects the diversity objectives we have more generally, having a clear understanding that even within government there can be robbing one to pay for the other. Defence, aviation, as I say, lots of areas need these STEM skills. They're then easily transferable into digital skills. There are better salaries for some of this elsewhere. So if you want to deliver that promise about high quality jobs, you really have to think about and have a labour market strategy for GB Energy, which works in this competitive context at all levels, from apprenticeship through to technical, through to engineering, through to even doctoral level. So again, in terms of the bill, in terms of direction and the objectives, to be an exemplar for the entire energy sector in relation to the skills matrix, in relation to how people are employed, the diversity objectives that any public company should have, that's what the bill should try and address itself to with sufficient detail.
Thank you.
Just a reminder again, we are sort of talking about what's on the face of the bill, not what GB Energy might do, blue sky thinking, that kind of stuff. Okay, I've seen two more people indicating. Andrew Barry.
Thank you very much, Chair. I think we're all agreed in objects that the production, distribution, storage and supply of clean energy will include nuclear energy, very important to your members, Mr Clancy. But just to really sort of build on Mr McAllister's point, there is a lack of clarity, I think, within the bill at the minute over the operational independence and the autonomy of Great British Nuclear. Is that something you are seeking from the government, and is it something that we should seek to have in the bill as we move through its committee stages?
Well, I think not just in terms of the bill, but the actual future of Great British Nuclear has a degree of uncertainty around it per se, because, again, a danger to repeat myself, we have been here before. I used to be a member of the Nuclear Industry Council some moons ago, and, you know, we are rightly evangelists of our members who deliver nuclear energy, and then down the back end in terms of decommissioning. Lots of controversies, we recognise that. But they're an essential part of the future energy mix and the achievement of our climate goals. So there has to be a range of certainties, and that's not a glib remark at all in response to it. And in the GB energy area, it is about companies knowing that they can invest and get the return, and therefore the bill needs to be consistent with that.
Stephen Flynn.
Oh, this is where it gets interesting. This is where the video that I did earlier on starts, and this is where, let's be honest, Stephen Flynn asked the important question, and it's very, very interesting. What I'll say is, why not use our rivers and to generate electricity by putting those wheel thingies? When people say that, it always makes me chuckle, because brilliant thingies, great word. Besides the water bank. Very interesting. But yeah, how quickly some people forget Chernobyl. Nobody wants that to happen again. Yeah, and now I've heard people say that oh, the health and safety, this and that is much more better. And if I'm honest, I wouldn't want one built down the bottom of my road. That's for certain.
Thank you, Chair. for allowing me to come back in. You've spoken very eloquently and rightly about the energy transition, about jobs, about skills, about STEM. But just for clarity, and I've double-checked on the bill there, there's absolutely no detail within the bill in relation to any of those points. Would that be correct?
So my understanding is that it isn't currently in there.
Okay, exactly.
But however, my understanding is that the statement of strategic priorities is where that would be contained. We do, so there's questions about how much should be added in, and we understand the logic of the bill is to create an enabling vehicle, is to enable GB Energy to act and to do things. So is it useful to put in many different limitations? Probably not. Like adding in too much detail will slow it down and be not. Is it, on the other hand, useful to put in a clause that says as the statement of strategic priorities should have regard for just transition and quality job creation? That could be a consideration specific to it.
But for clarity, that doesn't exist on the face of the bill, anything that's been spoken about in this context. Similarly, just as a point of clarity for myself, is there anything within the bill that gives you certainty that energy bills will be brought down by £300?
So, bringing energy bills down is a complicated process, and it depends on lots of things.
Is it within the bill, though?
Within the bill, I mean,
that's what's my responsibility. How would it be?
Yeah, I mean,
would it be in the bill?
The bill can't. I mean, could the bill say we will
question?
cap energy bills at this certain level? That would be it could theoretically, but that would not be part of GB Energy's role to cap it.
I mean, you can't divorce the fact that GB Energy operates in a still privatised energy asset environment. And consequently there are much broader questions about how bills are composed, the energy mix, etc. Now that is not on the face of the bill, and I'm sure the chair would stop me going down that. But I mean, having been the field official in energy, if anybody wants to talk about that, we can spend hours on it, and the construction of the energy on the energy sector. So I understand why the question's asked, but I mean, GB Energy is one entity within a much broader firmament of energy assets owned in different ways.
And does the bill enable the creation of a company which can over time grow to be something like EDF or Ørsted or Vattenfall? EDF brought bills down significantly during the energy crisis when we had soaring bills. Does the bill create the capacity to do that? Yes.
And if I'd answer it, I think the most important, often the focus in energy policy is on retail because it actually affects domestic consumers most tellingly, and obviously then more so on wholesale when the things go in a certain way. The biggest thing actually we would say, because we not necessarily represent engineering and science staff, is actually where's the generation going to come from? What's going down the pipes? What's going down the pipes consistently for the long term such that we have energy security, we have energy down those lines at a competitive price. And clearly a public sector champion in this regard can be a significant contributor to changing the trajectory of energy prices and giving us indigenous energy security.
If there are no further questions from members... Oh,
time, I'm happy to come back.
Well, I mean, if we're not going to just fill time for the sake of time, if you have a genuine...
But with all due respect, asking a question is not for the sake of time.
Okay.
It's just my job.
Right.
Just for full clarity then, yes, you've clarified that it's possible for these things to happen. I don't think anyone would disagree that it's possible for these things to happen. But as it stands, the bill doesn't provide any certainty in relation to any of those points, whether it's...
The question before. I think this is... Carry on.
No, it's fine, sure.
Okay, there's a minute left, go on.
So again, just for clarity, because you pushed back and said that EDF brought down bills, there's nothing within this bill, as it stands, that I can see, unless you're telling me otherwise, which says that GB Energy will do likewise. Is that correct?
I don't think it forces GB Energy to do likewise. I doubt that the legislation that set up EDF also forced EDF to do that. I think the legislation that set up EDF probably set up EDF as a company to operate and to give it freedom to act. And the question is, does this give us, and I would say the question to members here is, what do we do to enable the UK to finally be on par with our peers elsewhere And does this create a basis for that? Yes. Then, yes, can you please push and hold the government to account?
Order. I'm afraid that brings us to the end of the time allotted for the committee to ask this section of questions. I thank our witnesses on behalf of the committee. And can we have the next panel, three-person panel?
Oh, dear.
Thanks.
Oh, dear. Not like Stephen Flint to cause trouble. Oh, you've got to love Stephen Flynn. He's absolutely brilliant, isn't he? Oh, dear. Oh, but yeah, of all the questions that were asked, I thought his was the most important. Will it bring your bills down? Don't look convincing, do they? Yeah, so hello, Robert Downey. I hope you're well. And GB Energy is going to facilitate the private sector to build various types of generation, but is this not sold on the open energy market? So there's no possibility of reducing the cost of power. I think you're onto something there. That was something I was thinking the same as well. Yeah, exactly. Leapshin. Yeah, wouldn't expect anything less from Stephen Flynn. Just so he was brilliant. He was brilliant all the way through. Proper little Jobsworth, wasn't she? Our Dr. Rupert Hook. Spaffer loves nuclear. Why not build the first generator in his castle grounds? Totally agree. Yes. See how much he loves nuclear power. Then in England, the energy companies are paid to put their resources into the network, but in Scotland, they are charged for the same. Oh, interesting. Very interesting. There's a couple of these Aki's mad, yes. Yes, there's a couple of these hydro pumps that I know. The one on the Falls of Clyde and one on Loch Lomond. Sorry for butchered that. I do apologise, my good friend Aki's mad, yes. Sir Larry, I'm sure those nukes weigh heavily on his tiny mind. Yes. Oh. But Scottish government wanted to start their own public energy company, but UK government stomped on it and reminded them that energy is reserved to Westminster and Scottish government can't. Is that right? Very interesting. Don't surprise me, Evelyn. Don't surprise me. Doesn't surprise me. But anyway, that was just very, very interesting. I found that meeting very. I'll say there were a couple of other witnesses. If I'm honest, it didn't really say much anything different, really. And I'm certainly not going to waste an hour. Certainly not going to waste another hour just to hear the same sort of replies, and I just thought it was a great way to end our Stephen Flynn doing what Stephen Flynn does, causes trouble. No, he doesn't. He's just brilliant, and he just plain speaking, just doesn't waste any time, does he? Just basically gets to the meat of the crux of the problem and the heart of the matter. Ask the important questions. You're going to bring down energy bills. Not convinced. Are you? But anyway, I do hope it. Members, I will put my hand up. Who does your hair, and where did you buy that dress? Just ask you. Do you know, I don't really like that. I think you've really let yourself down, one Gerard. Sorry, my friend, you've let yourself down. I don't. See, because one thing I've noticed, the only person who basically is having their appearance mocked is somebody who's different. And like as I said, I wanted a safe space for friends like Rachel, and I think some of the stuff I've seen today, I've been a little bit disappointed, and that's the reason why I mentioned it earlier, because I don't like all that stuff. Because it seems to me that the good evening, Taraski. Hope you. BG, great idea is to make everyone in the UK to carry a pine wheel to generate energy. Very, very good. Yes, totally agree. There's a load of stuff in these select committees. Yeah, there are. They're really, really good. I prefer them more than the stuff in Parliament, in the chamber, because of a simple reason. They'll ask a question, and what they'll basically just grandstand and don't really get any answers. But I find these really, really fascinating, and even if you find stuff you don't know, you will always learn something, don't you? But anyway, what I will say is, been an enjoyable live stream. Odd couple of times I've felt a bit disappointed, but this is how it goes sometimes. But what I will say is, and I will allow you to get a breather, because as far as I know, I think Reagan Elite is on at 8 o'clock. And yes, it's great stream daily. Hope to see some of you on Ray. Yeah, I will be. Yeah, I will be. I will be popping into Reagan Elite's stream. Say hello, and I'll definitely get in contact with you. And I'll definitely get in contact with you, Mad Monk, because I think, especially after tonight, I think I do definitely need a moderator, because I think I've had somebody. And so, yeah, thanks. Thanks everyone. I'm glad you enjoyed it. I know I did. I always enjoy these live streams, and I just thought this would be an interesting one, and it certainly was about GB Energy. So, and I just found it interesting. But anyway, I'm rabbiting. So what I will say is, I'll let you have your breather and get yourselves all sorted for Reagan Elite stream, and I'll probably see you in there. And thanks for stopping by, and I do hope you enjoyed the stream. So I will wave you bye-bye and say thank you very much. Until the next time, and take care.